I believe that everyone has a story to tell. Now, sometimes people say to me, Nancy, I don't have a story. And I think what they're really saying is, I'm afraid to tell my story. There was a time when I couldn't tell my story, but today I can. When I was 15, I was a member of the gang, the Pals. Our hood was the theater district, and on Saturdays we'd take the F train from Queens to Manhattan and we'd stake out a target, the Lyceum, the Palace, the Marquee, and we would wait online for hours for cheap tickets to the hottest Broadway shows. Initiation into our gang meant having to sit through the same musical comedies 4, sometimes 5 times. And it was watching those shows that I first realized that stories have the power to make us laugh. But when I was 19, I stopped laughing. I had a secret that I swore I would never tell. I know now that laughing lowers our defenses and it makes us vulnerable. And I was guarding the biggest secret of my life, and that was a risk I couldn't afford to take. I'm gay. And at that time, I hadn't told my parents, I hadn't told my friends, and I hadn't told my siblings. I come from a big Jewish Italian family. When other kids were having brisket for Passover, we had lasagna. We had a Christmas tree at my brother's bris. But when it came to sex and politics, we were very traditional. So I knew, exactly who I was supposed to vote for, exactly what I was supposed to wear, and exactly who I was supposed to date. So when it came time to dinner, I sort of hanged my head in my plate, moved my posture around. I preferred taking naps to hanging out with my pals. And I began to wonder, what would the planet be like without me on it? Slowly, I discovered other people who had stories like mine. One Friday, we went to a women's comedy night, and a performer there said, I don't understand these straight people. I was just performing at a show in Texas. A guy came up to me afterwards, and he asked me, so, who's the man and who's the woman? And how does that whole sex thing work? She said, I spent hours in the parking lot just telling him my life. And listening to her, I realized that stories have the power to educate. So I started to tell my story. I told my colleagues. I held my breath. And I told my sisters. Elizabeth said to me, finally, we've been waiting for you to tell us. I exhaled. I wanted others to know the revelation, liberation, and joy that I had felt. And so I started to produce gay and lesbian comedy shows around the city. I even invited my sisters to one. And afterwards, Barbara said to me, Nan, that was so eye-opening. I had all of these ideas of what your life was going to be like. And now I realize it's really no different than mine. I mean, we laugh at the same things. And that's when I realized that stories have the power to heal. I believe that everyone has a story to tell. And when people say to me, Nancy, I don't have a story, perhaps what they're really saying is, I'm afraid that no one will listen to my story. And ironically, those are the stories that are most important to tell and most important for us to hear. Thank you.